Today we're going to talk about speaking to inform. It's pretty simple. To inform is just to educate. So let's just jump right into this, and here we go. All right, so when you want to inform your audience, you're just educating your audience. You're not trying to advocate or change their point of view or try to get them to buy something. So you're not persuading them, you're just educating them. Now, in some cases, what'll happen is, and you have to understand that general purposes tend to overlap each other. So sometimes when you inform people, you may teach them something and they may want to go out and do it. So people can argue that, well, that's kind of persuasion. Well, it's not really. Your main focus for this speech is just to educate, and that's it, nothing else. So this speech is just designed to convey knowledge. Now, the general purpose for this speech, of course, is to inform. Therefore, the specific purpose statement is going to change. And remember, that specific purpose statement is not the first thing in the introduction. The first thing in the introduction is going to be the attention getter, and you should be using an effective attention getter at this point. If you still don't understand that, you need to go back and watch that lecture again. You should then maybe follow up in the introduction with some supporting material, whether it be personal experience or maybe with an external source. And then you also want to close that introduction off with your central idea. But before the central idea and after the attention getter, somewhere in between, you should have a specific purpose statement. And that's the behavioral objective of the speech. And in that, for example, for this one, it should say, in my speech, I will inform you on, and then insert whatever your topic. It's a short sentence, but it's very important, and you got to have it in your presentation. Now, what are you looking for in this presentation? Well, there's some goals. Of course, the first goal is you want to maintain or enhance our understanding of the topic. And I listen to a lot of speeches, and I hear a whole bunch. I mean, like, for example, just this semester, I probably listened to about 150 different speeches. So I hear a wide scope of a lot of information. Your job is to get away from surface stuff and give me something that's a little bit kind of dig a little bit. Teach me something that I don't already know. That's important for speaking to inform. Think about your instructors that or your teachers that you like those classes where they kind of enhance your learning. They teach you something that you don't already know. If you heard the same thing over and over and over again for 4, 5, 6 years, you get bored with it. So you want to learn something new. You also want to make sure that your interest is maintained, or maintain your interest. It should be fun. It should be something that we like to see. So if you're just sitting there kind of stiff the whole time, you really want to make sure that people can kind of see and listen to what you're talking to. So make it interesting. Also, you want to be remembered. This is one of those things I always think about. Whenever I listen to informative speeches, I want to think to myself, can I use this information when I'm watching Jeopardy? And that's the things. And I listen to a lot of speeches, as I said earlier, and some of them are awesome. I mean, you just remember. I mean, you see people do these great things, and you're like, wow, that's a really cool speech. And it's, I enjoy it because I'm still in education. So things being remembered is very, very important. So how am I going to grade you? One, I want to make sure that you communicate the information accurately. I will fact check you if I need to. Some of you appear to use YouTube really well. So, and I can see that some information kind of comes back from YouTube, so you want to be careful with that. If I catch you cheating, I'll fail you automatically. So, but communicate information accurately. The way you get around cheating is just simply say where you found the information. And then make sure that you communicate the information clearly to the audience. So therefore, when we're given this speech, we want to make sure we say according to, or in an interview with. When we do those kind of things, that lets us know that we found that information outside. And it's not our own personal information. We found it from somebody else. And then the last thing, of course, is we want to maintain the interest of the audience. You can watch your audience. By this point, you should be watching and maintaining eye contact with your audience and looking to see if they are actually reacting to the information that you have. So try that. Do that. Make eye contact. And for you people that still don't have an audience, you really need to get an audience at this point. It is totally submarining your grade. So you need to have at least 5 people in your audience. This is public speaking. So, what are some different types of informative speeches? The first one is a speech of description. This is kind of like I call this the noun speech. This is a speech about a person, place, or thing. So this is something that you could give maybe to, if you were talking about, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something like a person. Like if you were going to give a speech about Gandhi, or someone along those lines, then this is the kind of speech you would give. It's something vivid. It has a lot of information about the person. It explains who they are and what they've done. I've had students give speeches. I had one student that gave a speech on American Horror Story, and they talked about the director of American Horror Story, the different characters, the different plot lines that are used, and how the show actually followed actual events that happened in real life. And so that was pretty cool. It talked about the actual events and what it followed. So it's pretty cool. Also, a speech about a demonstration. Speeches about demonstration actually show how things are done. Now, we don't do like how to make a grilled cheese sandwich or how to make Rice Krispie treats or how to make brownies in here. That doesn't really work, but a demonstration speech would be more like, for example, let's say you talk about, I had a student one time that here recently that did one on car maintenance and things you need to know about car maintenance, how car maintenance was done, and what you need to talk about, like changing the oil in your car and the process that goes along with that. So that was pretty cool. Again, something that I kind of remember. And the last one is a speech about a speech of explanation. Now, this is probably the harder one. This is one that's a little bit more abstract. This would be like, for example, you're talking about like religious practices. So, for example, I'm Methodist. Therefore, like, if I want to give a speech on John Wesley and the Wesleyan practices, or what it means to be a United Methodist, I could do that, and that would be a speech about an explanation. It kind of is more abstract. There's nothing tangible that's associated with it. So it's kind of like the polar opposite of the speech of description. So these are some different organizational patterns that we have that we would use for this type of speech. Chronological order, of course, just as a time sequence and how things work according to time. Spatial would be like, especially if you were doing a speech about how something's made, a speech of description, then that would be like how things are associated to other things. So like back to the car example, you would have things like, here's the engine in relation to the steering wheel and how that works. Causal deals with cause and effect. Now we do the causal approach in the informative speech. We want to talk about both sides, so the good and the bad. Now, if we were talking about persuasion, we would just talk about one or the other. But in the informative one, we're going to always talk about both sides because, again, we're not advocating anything. The next one, of course, is topical. And this is also like putting things into categories. And so this is one when you're looking at, you kind of understand that, hey, here are 3 separate categories. So I always use, for example, mountain bikes. So if I were giving a speech on mountain bikes and what they are, I could talk about different types of mountain bikes, equipment, additional equipment that you need besides a bike to ride your mountain bike, and then maybe places to ride your mountain bike. So those are 3 different categories that are associated with mountain biking. And then the last 2, of course, is we have sequential, and so sequential deals with how things work together, and then comparative, like comparing 2 items. All these organizational patterns you can look back in the lecture that we talked about on organizing and outlining your speech and look through that. Now, for the informative speech, I would like for everybody to have 3 to 4 main points for their speech. So if your speech doesn't have 3 to 4 main, you need to expand it and make it a little bit more, a little broader. So here's some examples of a specific purpose statement and essential idea. The specific purpose statement, you can see, for example, it incorporates the general purpose, and then it brings in the speech topic. It's not a long sentence, and it's only going to have one clear meaning or one clear subject. So I didn't say like kayak fishing and other equipment. I said, kayak fishing. So the sport of kayak fishing. So make sure, again, that specific purpose statement is going to be found somewhere in the introduction. Not first, not last, but maybe like the 3rd thing in the introduction. And you can look at my examples of the outlines that are found on Canvas in the outline folder, which is also found in the file section. So you can check that out. Then we have the central idea. Now, the central idea, of course, defines the content of the speech. And in my example, you can see I've done this based on topical or based on categories. And so I put the 3 different things: the types of boats, the licensing requirements, and fishing equipment that's needed to get started. So there you go. That's as clear as you can actually get it right there. So a couple things to remember in speaking to inform. Redundancy is not a bad thing. And Comp 1 and Comp 2, you may have heard that, hey, you don't want to repeat yourself so much. But in public speaking, you do. You can think back to the commercial if you've never seen it before, but there's a commercial back in the day called a head-on commercial where the people would put this like roll-on aspirin cream on their head, and the whole commercial, all they said was "head on, apply directly to your forehead," and they went over and over, and people knew exactly what that product was and what they were advertising. It was very boring, but people knew about it. Balance your information flow. Make sure that you got plenty of supporting material. For this speech, you need to have 8 pieces of external sources, and those should be said throughout your entire speech. So, like, you should say, according to National Geographic, they said blah blah blah. In an article written by so and so, you should reference people like you would in a paper, but you just reference them orally in your speech. So make sure you do that, and make sure you spread that out through your entire speech. So you have 3 to 4 main points. I would have at least 2 supporting materials in each of those main points. You're supposed to have a visual aid for this speech. I'm going to have it to where you guys actually create a visual aid and just submit a visual aid by the end of the week. You don't have to use it with your presentation because you probably won't have the equipment that's associated with it. So I'm just going to have it where you turn in like a 4-slide visual aid, and we'll kind of go from there. You need to look professional. Again, you need to stand up. If you're not standing up for these speeches, you need to stand up for the speech. You should stand back. I'm looking for eye contact, and really want to stress again that everybody needs to have an audience. Audiences are very important. You also need to be prepared, therefore you should have all your information and be ready to go. For this one, I'd like for you to use a speaking outline, and I'm going to send everybody an example of a speaking outline. I'd like for you to follow that. Again, that's also found on Canvas in the file section, and it's in a folder labeled outlines. You'll need to create a preparation outline. You also need to create a speaking outline, so make sure you do that. And as I said earlier, if you're developing a topic, you can pull from, your personal experience in developing a topic. That's fine, but you also have to have external sources, and those sources should be stated throughout your speech and also in those outlines. So that's a little bit about speaking to inform. I think you guys could be able to handle this at this point. If you have any questions, you can always email me on Canvas. Some of you are really good at that. Some of you haven't heard from at all this semester, so I'm kind of wondering what you're doing. But make sure you turn your speeches in on time. I want these by Friday, and that'd be great. All right, you guys have a great day, and I'll see you later.